Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Jaime Gomez, your president-elect, and this is WSP 79.4, live from Princeton, New Jersey. Our final speaker this morning is Meridith Elliott Powell, and ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a treat. Meridith was voted one of the top 15 business growth experts to watch by Currency Affair, top sales experts to follow on LinkedIn, and one of the top motivational sales speakers. Meridith has a cutting-edge message rooted in real-life examples and real-world knowledge. She's the author of 6 books, which you can look them up in Amazon or whatever, and go through them. She's regularly featured in publications such as Forbes, Fast Company, Investment News, and American Banker, among others. Very energetic. Meridith helps the leaders and business owners learn new rules for success today. She's gonna give us a great presentation on how to deal with what's going on right now. Meridith, take it away.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I tell you, given what is happening in the environment, I think that this presentation is probably more important than it has ever been. We promoted that I was going to do 5 strategies to help you lead a remote work team, but this crisis has been changing so rapidly and so quickly that I upped it to 8. Just for this presentation. And again, as we're heading into what they say the next 2 to 3 weeks are going to be particularly challenging, I think that this presentation is more timely than ever. So thank you to you and to Sue for having me here. Again, you gave me a great presentation, but whenever I do something virtually, I always like to see who's presenting to me. There's just a little bit more about me. My passion is really helping organizations and leaders understand how to turn uncertainty to competitive advantage. I've been speaking and writing about uncertainty for the last 5 years, never seeing it at the magnitude that we're at right now, but really it takes a different set of strategies and a different plan to get there. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about some of the biggest challenges that are in the minds of your remote workers right now, because if you're going to lead people, you've got to understand what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And these challenges are based on research that we did polling people who are asked to work remotely now. What are some of the top things that are on their mind? What are they worried about? And number 1 is most feel underprepared. Remember, people didn't go remote because they wanted to. They went remote because they had to. So many went home without the tools, the knowledge, the structure of exactly what it would mean to work from home. They fear a lack of compassion and understanding from maybe their company or leaders as to exactly what they're going through, even beyond work. Feeling isolation and loneliness, the fact that being in with your family, maybe with your children all day, isn't the same as getting the interaction that we get day in and day out from other people. There's a lot of fear and anxiety right now. Uncertainty creates that. They fear a lack of communication, understanding what exactly is going on as it relates to their job and to the company. We're going to talk a lot about that in a little bit. And they fear just not getting feedback, being out of the loop and not having an understanding as to what's going on, or maybe they won't get or they'll miss critical information. So let's flip that around. Let's talk about some of the biggest concerns that leaders have in taking a remote, in managing and leading a remote workforce. Number 1 is ensuring that the work gets done. There's no room for error, no fat in the margin when you're going through a crisis. So how do we make sure that people are doing what we're asking them to do? How do we stay connected to them? How do we make sure that we keep productivity high? How do we manage the transition, just get people comfortable? How do we lead new employees if you're lucky enough to be hiring right now? And then how do we hold people accountable and provide feedback? And at the end of this presentation, you're going to have all of the answers to that, and really so much more. Really a bigger understanding of what it takes to lead your remote work team through a time of crisis. It is different than just leading a team, and it is different than just leading a remote workforce. There was a great article a few years back, actually as far back as 2011, in the Harvard Business Review about about the difference between a wartime leader and a peacetime leader. And you need to think of yourself right now as a wartime leader, because going through a crisis, it takes the same skills that it takes to lead through a war. Think about this. When we started this year, when we all brought in the new year, we thought that 2020, we thought starting this new decade, this would be one of the best years we were going to have on record. Now here we sit just at the end of first quarter, and everything looks so different. So of course, how you were thinking about leading your team in January is going to be very different than how you need to lead your team right now. And a peacetime leader, that's who we were in January of this year. We were focused on growth, productivity, and creativity. Really, a peacetime leader is focused on thinking forward for the future and what could we become, versus a wartime leader is focused on the here and now and the one shot you have to make a decision and to get it right. A peacetime leader is really focusing on getting their team really engaged and giving leadership opportunity over to other people. But in a wartime position, you've got to be more of a directed leader. You've got to be more of giving people a strategy and a plan. They want stability. They want confidence. They want to know that you've got a strategy for how to get through this. And a wartime leader is just focused on sustainability, versus a peacetime leader is very much focused on growth. So as we go through this webinar, I want you to really begin to think about from this presentation, what are the skills and what are the things that you need to be doing differently to lead through this particular time? And one of the biggest things that a wartime leader needs to focus on is its people, product, and profit, in that order always. Your biggest and your highest use of your time needs to be focused on investing in your people, making sure that they feel okay, both from a work perspective, but also from a business perspective. And as we go through the strategies, we're going to really show you a system today, because each strategy is going to build on top of one another, really almost like a crisis management in Maslow's hierarchy of need, really making sure you're taking care of people at every level. So you need to do a personal assessment of yourself as you walk through these strategies and ask yourself what you're good at, what you're doing, and what you're not, and figure out where the growth, where your skill gaps are, because you need to be investing in your own leadership development right now as much as everything else you've got to do. But who you are as a leader is really going to determine how successful your team is, because you've got to understand what they need. And the last thing I want to draw your attention to is the fact that there are going to be 3 phases to this crisis, and you will need to lead differently through each single phase. Number 1 is we're just focused on sustaining the business, just keeping ourselves afloat and in business. Number 2, we'll start to talk about how we grow through this crisis. As the economy starts to turn back on, as things start to move again, how will you lead your team through that? And then, believe it or not, you'll need to lead your team past the crisis. You know, it's kind of crazy to think, but when the pandemic happened in 1918 and the whole world shut down at that point, it was just 3 years later that we were going through the roaring 20s, that we forgot about that, we turned back on, and we started to move again. So getting people back into the groove and getting the business going again will take a different style of leadership. And I really want you to think about it in all 3 phases. But for right now, we're going to focus on phase 1 and phase 2, because where we are is somewhere in between, and these are the strategies and these are the skills you need in order to get there. Number 1 is you have to understand the situation that your employees are going through. Number 1, this is not business as usual. Again, most teams have gone home not because they want to, but because they have to. That's a different motivator. This was a quick move, one made often without the right equipment information or structure. So the very fact that people may not have all the information they need in order to be successful, understand that big picture. And this is bigger than work. Even workers in the best circumstances have so much more to worry about than their job, their goals, and your company. They could have spouses or significant others being laid off. They could have children they've got to homeschool. They could have aging parents that they're worried about. And the power of uncertainty is huge. No one knows what's coming next or what the future holds. And people react to that very differently. So once you understand the situation, we can start to lead through the situation. And again, these go in order. So you have to fill the need that I'm talking about before you can go to the next level. And number two is that you've got to lay out the foundational procedures. Again, so many people went home so quickly that there could be a lot of gaps happening. So you've got to fill in the gaps and make sure you have answered the following: why you are doing this. Now that may sound silly because that's on the news every single day as to why you are doing this. But if you have not articulated to your team more than a few times, you need them to work remotely because you're concerned about their safety. You want to take care of your customers. You need to communicate to them. Maybe if some of your team is still working in the office, you need to communicate why you're doing this. Then you need to really articulate, how does this work? What is the process? What is the system? What is the picture that you see? And then please make sure they understand their priorities. Listen, there's going to be a lot of distraction at home. The priorities that you're asking of them now versus you are asking in February may be very different. So be clear about what their priorities will be. And then how will communication work? How will they get information? But also, how will they communicate with you? And what does success look like now? You know, back in 2008, when we were going through that crisis, we used to talk about the fact that flat was the new up, right? Because we had changed our definition of success. And if you have changed or adjusted your definition of success, communicate that with them. And last but not least, how long will this go on? Now, nobody has a crystal ball and nobody knows how long this will go on, but you need to communicate to your team, you know, I'm going to have you home through the month of April. We're relooking at May. Communicate as much as you can, keeping them informed. So filling in those gaps of the basic structure will set you up for the next level of need that your remote workers have. And that is that build relationships and trust. You have really got to learn to invest in your workforce so they can invest in you. Listen, right now for people, the only outside connection they have is work. So you have to fill the role bigger than you filled it in the past. You've got to understand the situation of every single person that is reporting to you. You could have workers that are working at home and they live alone. You could have workers who have 4 children and now they're having to homeschool all of them. You could have workers that have healthcare workers in their house that they're concerned about, that they're worried about. I have several friends that are struggling with aging parents right now. So you need to take an interest, always making sure to ask how they're doing, what's going on beyond work, because that's making deposits and building trust. And the reason this matters is because down the road, as we go through this crisis, you're going to need to ask for more from your employees. You're going to need to get them even to step to the plate more than they're doing right now. And if you make these investments now, they're going to be all in. They're going to be connected. So even before you ask, they'll be ready to step to the plate. And you've got to watch for signs. Watch for any changes going on with employees, because it could be a clue that something bigger is happening. I was working with a client of mine in Texas, and one of her star employees that she sent home just 2 weeks ago is really started to fall off the radar. She was missing meetings, not calling in like she needed to. And when I asked my CEO just to do a check-in with her. Well, both her daughter and son-in-law both lost their jobs, and they had to move in with 2 infant children. So it's caused all this chaos going on in her life. And remember, employees are worried that there will be a lack of compassion, and they may not always tell you what's going on because they're fearful for their jobs. You need to watch for signs and really take an interest. And prioritize one-to-ones or coaching sessions. Those are the one thing that should not fall off your schedule right now. Giving people one-on-one time is how we do a temperature check with them, but also how we let them know that we care about them. If you've never done one-to-ones, this is a great time to start. And if you have them on the calendar, have them on the schedule, don't take them off. But they do need to be, your role needs to be a little bit more defined as a leader. Most leaders that I have worked with in a good economy, in a peacetime economy, we have asked them to be more hands-off, focusing on the bigger picture, focusing on mergers, acquisitions, taking the company forward, more product development. But in a time of a crisis, we need to be more hands-on. We need to be more visible, more engaged, and more invested in the welfare of your team. It's very, very important in the middle of a crisis that you invest in relationships, because if you invest in relationships, they're going to give you so much more back. And you need the team to be as productive and as engaged as possible right now. You need to over communicate. Communicating is not enough right now. You need to over communicate. You need to redefine your culture. Look, the culture that you had day in and day out isn't the same culture that you have as the team goes home. So put some language around it. Say that we want to be more connected than we've ever been. We want to be more customer focused than we've ever been. We want to be focused on helping our community and helping our team. Whatever the language is that you want to give your team, redefine your culture. You need to begin every week with some type of focus call, telling people what the priorities are that week and what you hope to accomplish, what you see as the big picture beyond their roles. And then you need to end every week with a wrap up and call out a couple of stories of some people who have gone above and beyond and some good things that have happened. But people should start and end their week with you. You've got to use every medium, email, telephone, and yes, we have got to embrace video. Make communication two-way. Far too often we worry about getting communication out to your teams. I've advised so many of my clients to start at least a monthly town hall where people are able to call in, ask questions, state what they're thinking, and then redesign the meetings that you're having on a weekly or a monthly basis to be more inclusive of people. Most leaders that I'm working with, we're designing an agenda, but with that agenda, we're making sure that we give parts of that agenda to other people to lead parts of those meetings. So you need to make sure the communication is happening. You don't need to lead every single piece of the communication, but you've got to over communicate. And along with communication, I want you to be really transparent. I don't know if anybody saw the video that the CEO of Marriott did, but it's a great video that he did to his team, where he just got on and said, this is the most difficult communication I've ever had to give to the team, but I want to tell you what's going on with Marriott and what we're working on. Your team can handle bad news. What they can't handle is no news. And the reason they can't handle no news is because they'll start to make up their own answers to their questions if they're not getting those answers from you. So you need to think about, what do team members need to know? What would be advantageous for them to know? And I'll just tell you some things that they're thinking about is, how is business working right now? What are our leaders worried about? What are they excited about? What's the good news that is happening out there? What is the challenge that we're focused? What do we know the answers to? What do we not know the answers to? And what do you expect? And what do you most need from them? Look, your team wants to help you. They want to help you be successful, but you've got to be letting them know the bigger picture things that are going on. Listen, people are worried beyond their jobs right now. They're worried for the company. They're worried for the marketplace. They're worried for the industry. Share as much as you can share and be transparent when you know the answers to things. People aren't expecting good news right now, like a little bit of it, but they just want to know what's going on. So as much as you can share, as often as you can share it, and they're going to get seeing you is going to give them a calming effect. So I've even got one client that's doing an update, a 15-minute update every single day. I don't know. I mean, maybe that could be overkill, but it's better to over communicate and pull it back than it is to not communicate and not tell them more of what's going on. Now let's talk about being visible, because it's incredibly important that you're visible. And again, that's going to give people a calming effect. So the team needs to hear, see, and connect with you. That's incredibly important. Again, there's going to be a calming effect. Be vulnerable, be open about what you're worried about, but also be a visionary. Tell them that you see life after this crisis and what you're thinking about for the company beyond that. Again, use all mediums, start and end the week, and increase and decrease as needed. But again, during peacetime, I really advise, when we started the year with so many CEOs and C-suite professionals that I work with, we had advised their teams to really take over the day in, day out leadership of the team and freed them up to go do other things. But now, in a time of crisis, I've pulled them back in to the company. And you being visible and your team seeing you is one of the most important things that you can do right now. Number 7, engage them. Once you have built all these layers up to this point, they're seeing you regularly, you're over communicating, you've been transparent, you've met their basic needs, you've built a relationship, now they're ready to engage with you. Now they're ready to help you get through any type of a crisis. But you've got to ask yourself, have I built the environment where I'm inviting them to be engaged? So the things that you need to do is understand that people support what they help create. They've got ideas to help you through this crisis, but you've got to make sure that you're asking for the help. Listen, I told you that I need you to be a leader who is giving direction right now. You're saying that this is what we need to do. This is the plan we have for the crisis. But you still need to ask people what their ideas are and how they can engage in the process. Again, when you've met the needs up to this point, they're ready to give you everything they've got. But some things that you can do is be very clear on where you need their help, very clear on where you need their ideas. You can create project teams to work on certain challenges or certain opportunities. You can give them a voice, ask them for their ideas and opinions, and spend a lot of time rewarding and recognizing. I've directed a lot of my clients to really capture some of the greatest stories happening in their business right now so that they can celebrate those every single week, all the good news stuff where people are going above and beyond. But you need everybody on your team to be giving you everything they've got right now. But if you're not creating a culture that allows them to engage, they're not going to step to the plate with their ideas unless you create an environment that allows that. And last but not least, it may sound crazy, but you really need to encourage fun. Remember, your team has lost most of their social outlets. Some people may be in the house with kids and family members, and they need an outlet. So you could encourage fun. Realize it is incredibly important. Humor is so valuable right now. So use it. There are so many great jokes and memes and cartoons going around right now. And for the ones that you can, I encourage you as a leader to be sharing those. Invite people to lunch and learns and let them kind of circle them up themselves. I've got one client that has a weekly lunch going where people connect and talk about how you're managing your workload and taking care of your kids at home. We've got another that's doing a lunch and learn for people who are just living by themselves, how things that they're doing to keep themselves entertained, but allow people to gather on your technology for just stuff that is enjoyable and social for them. Allow them to have social hours. And I've even got one client that's got at the end of April, they're going to do a talent show. But realize that you're more than just a place for people to work right now. It's bigger than that. People are going to remember how you led through this crisis. And it's bigger than just leading them at work. You're really leading them through a transformational experience in their life. So I just want to do a quick review, and it's really your plan of action. Number one is make sure you have stepped back and really understand the situation. And you can't lead exactly like you did in January. This is different. Have you laid the foundational procedures? Do people understand what's expected of them? Have you filled those gaps? And that's a great question to ask them. Are you investing daily on building relationships and fostering trust? Are you over communicating? Are you making sure that people understand what you're thinking about from a leadership perspective? Are you transparent? Are you letting them know what you're excited about, what you're worried about, and are you visible? Are you giving them opportunities to engage beyond just their role? And are you giving them an outlet for fun? So if you do those things, I think leadership is so critically important right now. And you really have a chance to make a difference and create a bond with your employees that is going to pay dividends far beyond this crisis. But you've got to back up and you've got to lead according to these steps. And if you do that, I promise you, it's not only going to carry you through all three phases of this crisis, but it's going to put you and your team in a position to really navigate uncertainty going forward beautifully. So I'll turn it back over to you. I'd love to take some questions. There's my contact information. If there's something I didn't address, please reach out to me. I'm trying to help people through these challenging times right now as well. So if there's something I didn't address or you just want to connect, I'd be honored to connect as well.
Thank you, Meredith. Wow, very powerful, very interesting, and certainly this time is surreal for all of us.
Yes.
In fact, I feel like a character in one of my favorite books, the Love in Times of Cholera, from my compatriot, Garcia Marquez. He was navigating the river up and down because he couldn't reach any port. So let me piggyback on something you said. In fact, I'm going to offer myself as an example. Waiting for the audience to sharpen their knives and send us some questions. I've been leading a remote team, for the past 2 years. My people are spread throughout the United States. We work at different time zones and all that. We're fortunate in a way that we were used to this situation, right?
Yeah.
This is how you do it. Nonetheless, you can see the anxiety of people going through the roof. Is that, my days are actually getting longer. I'm only getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep. People are working more nowadays, from home than they were at the office. My concern, here, of course, is making mistakes, missteps that I can take and that I can really create a time bomb. Any advice, any thoughts on how to avoid these mistakes, these missteps?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is to back up and truly help people understand a couple of things. Number one is, what are their priorities? So that, we could all work ourselves into a tailspin right now. We all have more work to do than we can possibly manage, which is crazy when you think the fact that the economy's set down. But help them make a mini win every day. What needs to be accomplished and what will success look like for that day or for that week? The other is, you've got to help them understand the importance of rebuilding their energy, helping them understand that there is only so long they can work without pouring energy back into them. I think also letting them know that you're worried about mistakes, and to say, I need you to step away from things, every 3 to 4 hours, go eat lunch with your kids, or go take a walk around the block, or whatever you're allowed to do, because I need you to take some time for you, so that when you are there, we're focused. And let them know that the goal is not to be busy, it's to be productive, and that there's a difference in that. And if they focus that priorities, they'll be productive.
Right. And what about advice for those of us who, for the first time ever, pretend to be broadcasters or, radio station people like me here? It's the first time they do video. They see a camera, they panic, they don't know what to do. Any advice to those?
Yeah. Number one is people are so forgiving right now. So you just do it. I mean, there's no better way to do it than just to get out there and to do it. You'll get better and better and better at it. But you've got to understand that nobody needs you to be perfect right now. They just need to see you and to talk to you and to engage with you. So they're going to be so forgiving of anything that of anything that you do. You may just want to start out by saying, look, I don't do this all the time. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but I know this isn't about me. It's about connecting with you. So if you'll forgive me for fumbling through this, I really just want to connect with you. We're going to be very, very kind and very forgiving right now.
Well, during the peacetime, wartime comparison that you were making on the leaders, certainly one of the bullet points I remember was defining success. Okay,
yeah.
Here's what's success in this case. COVID-19 will disappear. We're fantastic. We won the war. However, you got to redefine the criteria, the parameters that define that success.
Yeah.
About redefining those criteria?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I think that you need to sit down as a leadership team and say, for the month of April, what is success going to look like for us? Do we just want our team to sustain volume? Do we want our team to, I've got one client that if we could just stay at 80% capacity, that's going to be success for us. And I think you need to define that, what success looks for you month by month, and then communicate that out to the team, because they're still functioning. I've got a client in Colorado, and I was out there in January presenting for them, and they had some unbelievably extreme goals for the first quarter. Well, they missed their goals, and they called me back in March and said, our team morale is through the roof. And the first thing I found was you never adjusted the goals. So people think they failed. And you've got to understand that. So we know at the leadership level what our expectations are, but we need to redefine and communicate that for the team so that they can breathe and relax and know that what they're doing is good enough to get us to the end game.
Okay. Certainly one of the things looking at, the description you were making on the phases, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Could you elaborate a little bit more onto what each phase means? How do you transition from one to the other?
Yeah, I think this is a really important thing to define and to help your team through as a leader. And really, when we think about phase 1, which is really the phase we are in a world right now, we're just kind of grappling with this new reality. The economy shut down, things are, going on. So you've got to figure out at that point, what are the basic needs that we have in order just to keep the business that we've got and just to move forward. We're just trying to live day in and day out. But, as countries start to turn their economy back on, you're going to need to grow a little bit in that. And you're going to need to help your team understand whether they need to start reaching out and actually aggressively selling again, or whether they need to change some things from a competitive standpoint. Maybe there are some skills they're going to need to do differently. I'm working with one team where the sales team is now going to completely sell virtually. And so that's really going to be, different. And then it's hard to believe, but there is life after this crisis. And we've got to be preparing the team for what's going to be different. How are we going to do business differently? And what are some of the opportunities we have in order to be successful out there?
Great. Meridith, our people will have your presentation, and they're going to sort through it. They're going to look at the recording, and they're probably going to ask themselves, oh my God, I'm drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Where do I start? What do I do first?
Because it feels like a lot. And remember, things go in order. The first two things you've got to do is, number one, get the foundational procedures in place. Check in with everybody and say, do you have everything you need, and how are you doing? The second is really go back and really work to build those relationships. Check in with people, understand the situation that they're in. Those two things are going to carry you. A long way.
Great. I don't have any more questions at this point. I think I'm going to listen to this recording several times because there are many things I need to apply to my own self and my team. Meridith, on behalf of the Society of Plastic Engineers, I want to thank you for participating this morning. Of course, I gotta send you off with a round of applause. Like I
love that.
Else. No doubt this has been an inspiring presentation. I'm going to take something you said to heart, which is, why humor is so valuable.
Yeah.
And why do we need to engage and all that